He saw them teeming through the little microscope.
We are truly as gods if we can see everything from this highest point of the heavens to the tiniest creatures on earth.
Artists also sought to be accurate and true to nature in their pictures. A century before Vermeer, the German artist Dürer had invented this device to aid in the portrayal of perspective.
Any movement on this is huge on the grid. It's a very awkward way of drawing. You really ought to be using a dead body. You can see why this never caught on with artists. You have to make remarkably still and close one eye. And it's very awkward with this stick in front of you. Using this grid to fix the perspective and to help the drawing is just one of the dozens of things artists have tried to do. Really to make the first mark easier. It never stops being daunting sitting down to draw something when what you're doing is producing a confidence trick. And they've used things like camera obscuras. In fact, I think people thought that Vermeer painted from a camera obscura where you project an image is projected onto a board. He couldn't possibly have done it. It's incredibly difficult. He wouldn't have got any of the colours right, so you'd have to do it in the dark.
Living in a small, closely knit community, Vermeer learned to protect his privacy. Yet the Dutch remain immensely curious about their neighbours. This must have been painful to an artist who once told a visiting Frenchman that he had no picture to show him when he had a roomful next door. In the Dutch countryside, the neat geometrical lines of the canals are a constant reminder of how man gave order and balance to nature. This confident, scrupulously tended land had been under threat for many decades when Vermeer was born. This was the war with Catholic Spain that stretched over 80 years. The headquarters of the Protestant Dutch resistance was in Vermeer's hometown Delft. It was here that the great national hero William the Silent was assassinated by a Catholic bullet in 1584. In his youth, Vermeer must often have seen his coldly grandiloquent tomb in the new church in Delft opposite his house. Vermeer's paintings suggest the pride he felt in the achievements of his small, embattled country.
The 80 Years' War had a tremendous impact on Dutch society. A republic was born instead of a monarchy, an independent state instead of a part of a large Spanish empire. And for most, I think important is the birth of an own culture, a culture of middle class, so not a nobility, with a display of wealth not by palaces but by town halls, and with a participation of nearly all social layers of society.
Vermeer's father was well-to-do, a silk weaver as well as an art dealer. Perhaps from him Vermeer gained his appreciation of the texture and variety of fabrics, which he displayed with such skill in his paintings. Like his father, he too became an art dealer. The earliest known painting by Vermeer is a scene from the New Testament. Christ is being entertained by the sisters Martha and Mary. Christ, by his position in the painting, links the two attitudes, the active and the contemplative, and seems to come down, as does Vermeer, in favor of the contemplative. Religion was to impinge on his life. Coming from a Protestant home, at the age of 20 he married a Catholic.
He was willing to be converted to Catholicism for the sake of the marriage. He married into a family which was not welcoming. His mother-in-law was against it, as far as we can tell from the beginning. But the interesting thing is that he managed to win over everybody concerned, and when the mother-in-law became one of his most assiduous supporters, leaving money in her will to him personally. And he appears to have had, in that way, let's not say winning ways, but to be determined about getting on with what he wanted to do, which was to paint 2 paintings a year. This is a slow painter and needs the means to do it. The mother-in-law's household in which to live, in which to paint.
There was a price to pay for becoming a Catholic.
The Dutch Republic was by birth a Protestant state, and Protestantism was the only officially recognized religion. The new authorities took over the churches of the Catholic, the monasteries and the land they owned, and they gave it to the Protestants. And Catholic services were officially forbidden. So Catholics were, to a certain extent, second-rank citizens. But there is another side too. For in practice there was more tolerance, and as far as Catholic churches were carried out in private and the Catholics wouldn't disturb the public order, they were allowed to do it.
This poster shows Catholic houses of worship open for services, like this house in Amsterdam. Perhaps the need to keep a low profile influenced Vermeer's choice of themes and the ambiguity of the way he rendered their message. The difference in his attitude to that of a contemporary artist who was also painting in Delft at the same time is very apparent. Peter de Hooch brought a direct, robust joviality to his domestic scenes. It was the first age where individual middle-class taste counted. The wealthy merchants favored, as the aristocracy had done, portrayals of people much like themselves, acting out their tastes, interests and moral concerns. Vermeer must have known the work of artists like Nicholas Mace, the idle servant. But this sort of folksy humour wasn't his style. He was looking for something more subtle. His portrayal of a girl asleep is awkward in overall composition, but brilliant in detail. Unlike the idle servant, she looks more gentle and sad than slothful. The clutter of objects on the table suggests that Vermeer is still experimenting with ways to express his theme. The crumpled rug seems both too large in the foreground and too distant on the girl's side of the table.
While a painting stolen from the White collection in Dublin was rediscovered in 1993, we had the opportunity to make a first examination of the painting while it was still in Antwerp. And there we discovered that the central vanishing point used by Vermeer to create his perspective was actually found in the eye of the seated woman behind the desk. These 2 squares are imaginary paintings, and Vermeer would apply a nail in the wall on either side of the painting, and he would take a piece of string, apply chalk to the string, and he would place it on one of the distance points